I really appreciate your company. Thanks for joining me. We are live on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 144. Disappointing, disrespectful, and worse ever are some of the words used to describe the president's encounter with the media Wednesday evening. President Akuffo-Addo had stated in his first media encounter 6 months after assuming office that he was going to engage the media twice every year. In fact, in his opening remarks at the encounter Wednesday, he admitted his office almost missed that promise for 2018. Now, the first two events were critiqued. The Media Foundation for West Africa, MFWA, had recommendations after the second for future events. While it appears things did not work out as the MFWA anticipated, its executive director has described this encounter as the worst ever. Even though the advertised time for the program was 5 p.m., the president turned up 30 minutes late, and yet he was in a hurry to end the program. Watch this.
Mr. President, I want to invite Mr. Wilberforce Sassari, who has a question on energy. On security, Abdul Hanan from Marhaba FM has a question. Mr. Gordon Asarbidi from the New Crusading Guide has a question on education. Mr. Donald Dapate has a question on politics and governance. Mr. Charles Techibwedu has a question on international relations.
Can we stop there? Can we just stop there? That would be the 7 o'clock, especially Charles Techibwedu, who's my good friend. Let's stop with Charles Techibwedu.
Please step up to the microphone. Please step up to the microphone.
Let's stop with Charles Techibwedu. It'll be...
Let's step up to the microphone, gentlemen.
Well, some heads of civil society organizations have been reacting to the encounter, especially the president's response to a question on their criticism of some of his major policies. I've been joined by Programs Manager of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, Michael Buedi, and my colleague Raymond Aqua as well. But first, watch this and we'll have a discussion after that.
I think, honestly, that the president's speech could have been a bit shorter, you know, and in his answers to the questions asked, I think he sometimes
Mine is a simple one. Mr. President, we know some of your major policy initiatives have come under attacks from policy think tanks and the opposition political parties. Would you consider revising some of these policy initiatives, including the free SHS?
What about the attacks by the think tanks and the opposition on policies? Is that right? This is what we have all fought for a long time, an open society that allows everybody to express their views on government policy and develop alternative views, support, as the case may be. But one thing that is becoming clear to me is that it seems that every step that we want to take to modernize our society, to initiate the process of transformation, is met with resistance by our opponents. Digitization, paperless ports, national ID card, of course, free senior high school education. All of these steps that are being taken to take our country into the 21st century are being resisted by the opposition. I know some people have a vested interest in backwardness, in keeping people ignorant and backward, because they can then manipulate them easier. The Ghanaian people and myself were both in a hurry to get to the 21st century, and we're going to go and go and go and go until. So, as far as I'm concerned, these matters, these are policies that are the subject of attack. They're right. The think tanks and whatever, many of the think tanks too, many of the bombs they throw turn out to be very damp squads. At the end of the day, they have very little substance to them. They're right. I'll be the first to say that it is their right to open their mouth and say what they want. But they're not going to deter me. They're not going to deter this administration from continuing the path of bringing modern instruments of governance, attitudes towards governance, and bringing the economic initiatives that will take Ghana to be a full and active member of this 21st century.
So there you have it, President Akuffo-Addo responding to that question. And that was the last question of the day. And as I mentioned, I've been joined by a programs manager of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Great to have you here, Mr. Boji.
Thank you very much. And I am the fundraising manager.
All right. Okay. All right. Great to have you as well. Now, let me ask you first what you make of the president's response to that question about organizations like yours criticizing or critiquing his governance so far.
I think, let me say first and foremost that the whole encounter with the media is great, and we want to congratulate the president for continuing that initiative. Why? Because it is expanding the frontiers of transparency and open governance. Having said that, I wouldn't fault the president for perceiving that our criticism is an attack, because I mean, somebody may see the glass as half full, and others may see it as half empty.
But
the most important thing is the substance of the criticism. It is not the attack. Because let me just quickly end here.
Okay, sure.
And you see, because a very important piece of legislation, as the Whistleblowers Act says, that the Section 1 says that a person may make disclosure of information where the person has reasonable cause to believe that the information tends to show an economic crime has been committed, is about to be committed, or is likely to be committed. This is a charge that the law places on citizens.
Okay. But doesn't the perception of feedback or criticism being an attack affect how it's processed?
Well, you see, we need to all contribute to good governance. I choose to raise red flags or question what I perceive as corruption risk areas in government policy. It is for government to ensure that my trust, my belief, my confidence in him is enhanced and is raised by responding to those issues that I raise. Investigate it where necessary and say that, well, you suspected it, but there is nothing to it, and then let's move on. But for every allegation that will be raised, my sister, there is always a lesson that will be learned from it. Even if it's empty, there would be something to be learned from it. The most important thing is that let's continue to increase confidence that citizens have in governance. Let's not pretend or behave as if many of the allegations that had been raised in the past had gone with that. There are instances where some of the allegations had brought something to the fore.
Okay.
So what about the issues that came with regards to the energy thing, the Ameri contract? There was something good that came out of it. Ultimately, Ghana saved 51 million.
So we are told.
So we are told. So therefore, it means that some of the allegations can produce positive results. Let's cool down a little bit. Look into the allegations. If there's no substance in it, just inform Ghanaians that we've looked into it. There's no substance in it. Then we can move on. But to help good governance, we will continue to raise the red flag.
Now, some have raised concerns about the nature of the question, the fact that the journalists decided to box civil society organizations and policy think tanks and the opposition. Probably some have suggested that may have informed the president's posture. But away from this, there was another question about one controversial issue now, which has to do with the Oslo Chancery building. And there again, the question was, would the president probe or have an independent probe on the matter as suggested by the minority? Again, the president says he's not going to do anything like that. Over the years, what is your assessment of the president's posture when it comes to allegations of corruption against members of his government?
Well, you see, I've always said this, that it's very difficult for me to make that assessment, because once you make that assessment, you are driving into the realm of political competition, and so this one then becomes better than the other. But all that I have to say is that the president is doing his job. He's telling people that I have confidence in my ministers. He's showing leadership to his appointees. But you see, it may not satisfy us. In most times, we would want perhaps an alternative answer to, just wishing it away. So if we raise, or if somebody raises an allegation, you see, it is because we had extremely politicized everything. And that is why whenever somebody speaks, you are first looking at which political party the person belongs to before then you would give credence to what he's saying or not. Other than that, anybody, every Ghanaian would have to be a citizen and raise issues if they feel and they have reason to believe that there is something untoward about to happen or has happened.
Right. Now, we've got Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah on the line. He just called in, has a reaction. Good morning, sir. Thanks for your time.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Great to have you here. There are a lot of questions we want to ask, but first, your reaction on what Mr. Boedi has been saying.
I haven't quite followed exactly what he's been saying. I understand you want a reaction from me, rather, so maybe you can tell me exactly.
Okay, sorry. Then there must be some miscommunication there, but it's fine. Let's get your reaction. Now, we've been speaking to heads of civil society organizations, and they say that, for example, the president's posture or response to the question on their criticisms of some of his policies was quite unsatisfactory.
I think that's an opinion they're entitled to. They don't think that the president's response was satisfactory, as in their opinion, the president didn't answer their criticism satisfactorily. And it's an opinion they have which we can't begrudge them for. There are other people who don't exactly share that opinion, who think that the president's response was satisfactory. Indeed, they have made the point that they hold a view that a number of issues have come up and they want it handled in a particular way. And I think the president has responded to a specific question as to whether or not he will set up a full-scale probe on a particular matter, that is the Oslo matter. The president gave the minister an opportunity to give the initial factual response to that one. And then the president proceeded to make the point that when you make an allegation, there must be some prima facie basis upon which we set up a full commission of inquiry or a full probe. In the absence of that, we're not going to be chasing every allegation that flies, because if we do, we'll spend the rest of the time just chasing allegations. And therefore, when somebody makes an allegation, that allegation should be substantiated.
All right, Mr. Nkrumah, sorry to cut in. I was actually talking about the last question about civil society organizations and the opposition critiquing some of the major policies and whether he would revise any, especially the free senior high school program. But let me just ask you this. Going into this encounter, what was the plan? How many questions were you expecting to hear from journalists?
Let me just respond to this free senior high school or criticisms from civil society groups. I don't think we should get into a space where we think that if I say something about you right now, the fact that I have said it makes it sacrosanct. It is feedback I've given you. You're allowed to consider it to decide whether you would accommodate it or not. I think that's a governance process in which we operate, because there's not always a single view. There are various views. And so we listen, we weigh, and we take a decision. The point the president made is that we will not be distracted from the key agenda. And I think that doesn't deviate even from what the civil society groups want. What they want is to be heard, for their views to be factored into what we are doing. I'm not sure that they are saying that we should cede everything that is being done to their opinions. I think it's a collaboration. And so there are things we agree and there are things we disagree with them on. The agenda was to do two things: to give the president an opportunity to outline a number of things, and to give at least about 1 hour for journalists who were gathered to have an opportunity to also inquire of the president. Both things happened. I've heard persons who say the president should not have even spoken at all. He should have just taken questions. We disagree with that. I've heard people who say that we should have had some more questions. We think that we should look at ways by which we can get more questions coming through. And there have been some brilliant suggestions about extending the time even. Yesterday we did a little over an hour for the Q&A session. Some say let's go to 2 hours. Some say 1.5 hours. I think those are positive bits of feedback that we can factor into what we are doing at this point in time. But all in all, basic objective achieved. We can build on it.
Mr. Nkrumah, let me just ask this. The earlier advertised time was 10 a.m.
Yes.
and then it was rescheduled to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
The president, in his opening remarks, mentioned that they almost missed the promise of holding this encounter twice every year, as stated earlier. Were we really ready for this encounter? The president appeared to be in a hurry.
So, two things. One, when I hear people say the president was in a hurry, and I ask them what underlines that claim, said because he said let's close at 7. Well, but because we had already agreed that we're going to do 1.5 hours, and we actually did more than 1.5 hours. So the reason for which some say the president was in a hurry does not align. The president initially scheduled the event for 10 a.m., but you would recall that he arrived at 3 a.m. the night before from his Austrian trip. And that's why we moved it to the evening. During the day, he had a National Security Council meeting, which dragged on a little bit. There are a number of key security matters that needed to be attended to, which he attended to. And so we started it at 5:30 instead of 5. But we still made time for the 1.5 hours and even a little beyond that we had allocated for this program. I think the feedback, and it is legitimate feedback, the feedback is that can we add some more time to it? Yesterday, the structure and the format, in our opinion, was fine. The time is what I think legitimately there's a call that we should extend the time. I think that if we focus our attention there and explore how we can get some more time for questions and answers, it will be helpful. For example, part of what through the DJA we had agreed was that we were supposed to tone down on long compliments and preambles and all. We would like it if the president was being praised by everybody, but no, we don't even want that. We want to go straight to the point. You notice that, for example, the first 6 questions were strict and straight to the point, very sharp. The president had an opportunity to give good background and explain. And I think the feedback is that if we have some more time, we can have a deeper interaction. I think that is good feedback that we can build on. But some of these things about the president was defensive. Of course, if he disagrees with something, I'm not sure we're asking him to lie to the people of Ghana. He should be able to tell us, no, I disagree with this point of view. No, I don't agree with this point of view. I think this minister has deeper detail on this matter. Minister, come forward and speak to the detail before I give the broader answer. So I think we've achieved something and we can build on it.
Great to have you here. Kojo Nkrumah is Information Minister, reacting to a lot of the concerns that have been raised after that encounter with President Akuffo-Addo with media person last night. We've got President of the GJA, Afil on the line with us. Great to have you here, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Now, we clearly understand that you collaborated with the Office of the President to produce or organize this particular encounter. We've had previous encounters and this one, but the feedback on this is not as good as the others. What is your own assessment of what happened yesterday?
Yesterday's event has its pluses and minuses. One big plus was that it reflected orderliness. A clear departure from previous events, which was chaotic in certain aspects when it comes to, especially over question time, see people scrambling to raise their hands, scrambling to catch the attention of whoever will call them. People queuing up even when they had not been called. The chaotic spectacle was missing conspicuously from yesterday's event. So that was, in terms of orderliness, at least the...
Okay, Mr. Money, let me just come in there, talking about the way the questions or the way the journalists were called to ask their questions. How was the selection process done? I understand that people had to write their names and their questions.
Yeah.
Was it in order? Was it in order of the time the journalists arrived, or the questions were randomly selected and the journalists were called?
The people were asked to indicate areas in which they were going to ask their questions. Certain specific areas were identified, like the economy, like politics, like sports, like the environment, like agri and all that. And they started with the economy. And unfortunately, other sectors didn't have the opportunity to be featured.
And sorry to come in again, because in the very last batch of questions that were asked, there was one question on health. I had the Information Minister say we have one on health, one on education, one on agri.
Health, force,
Yes.
economic health force, and we didn't get to politics. As far as I could recall, we didn't get to politics. But it's a learning curve. We expected the president to allot more time for questions. It seems the speech ate into the question time. And I've listened to comments, some palatable, some unpalatable, and that's natural. The pesky tendency of journalists is to ventilate their concerns, articulate their views on every issue under the sun. Ours is a free society, so that's welcome. Some have welcomed yesterday's events as good quality, others, to quote Manasseh, the worst ever in his life. This is his opinion, to which he is fully entitled. So we for us, yes, we collaborated with the ministry and the Jubilee House, and we feel that yesterday's event provides a fountain of lessons from which we will drink, because we have not arrived yet in shaping a system of presidential encounters which will serve the interests of journalists better than the case in previous years.
Mr. Money, quickly, one other thing that has come up after such events is the quality of questions asked by journalists.
The quality of questions, some of the questions were appreciably high in terms of quality, others abysmally low. So if we strike a balance between the high and the low, the average is the outcome with the result. So in terms of quality of questions, I would score a modest 55, between 55 and 60.
Could you say that again? 65, you said?
Between 55 and 60.
Okay, 55 and 60%.
Yes, that's my modest score. That's my modest score. But I've done better. But I believe if more people had been allowed to ask questions, I believe the classes would have dropped the minuses. 15 out of 75 had opportunity to ask questions. 70 had indicated a willingness to ask questions, but the opportunity fell on only 15.
Mr. Money, we were told just shortly by the information minister the planned time for the Q&A was an hour, right? And you were aware of this going into the program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But
how were we expecting, in any way, even if people were asking simple sentence questions, the president to respond to about 75 questions in an hour? Was that a realistic estimation?
No. It's not within the bounds of possibility to ask 70 questions within an hour. No.
And so the question has been, why invite all these journalists to raise their hopes high and they don't get the opportunity to ask the president any question?
Again, the reality, the stark reality is that if even you invite 20, not all of them have the opportunity, depending on the time the president takes in answering the questions.
You said even if you invite 10 journalists?
20, no, we've been 20, because there was no time limit. He should answer any question.
So
and he could tell.
Time has been a major problem over the years.
Time is a major problem.
So going into the next media encounter, how are you hoping to work this out? Are you going to reduce the number of journalists? Or are you going to increase the time they have to meet the president?
It's best repeating that the event provides a fountain of lessons. We all need to drink. The presidency, the media, the DJs, and all our stakeholders, we need to drink from this fountain of lessons and then see how best we can shape a better media encounter the next time around. We know we are not impervious to progressive ideas, so we are taking them on board. Criticism, instead of criticism is a gift, so we receive the gift of criticisms but we hope that they are directed at building a better media encounters and not killings altogether.
Thank you very much for your time. Mr. Afil-Moni is president of the Ghana Journalists Association, and that's what he had to share about the media encounter with the president last evening. But what about the journalists who were there, who wanted to ask questions? Many of them couldn't. Here's what they had to say after the program.
I think, honestly, that the president's speech could have been a bit shorter, and in his answers to the questions asked, I think he sometimes over-elaborated on the questions, so it took a bit more time. So if the speech itself was short, his responses to the questions were a bit shorter, we could have gotten more time for the journalists to ask questions.
We're supposed to start at 5. The president came in almost 30 minutes late. So that took 30 minutes away from the program. Then he spoke for almost 40 minutes. So that's 1 hour, 10 minutes gone. By the time we got an opportunity to start asking questions, it was 10 minutes past 6. You note the information minister said we'll close in an hour, which really would have meant that we'll have 1 clear hour to ask questions. That in itself wouldn't be enough. But having taken 10 minutes of that already, the president insisted, no, I want to finish at 7. The effect of that is we couldn't ask a lot of these questions.
And also, you had some colleague journalists there assessing that encounter with the president. But I've got Mr. Michael Buedi. He's with the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Quickly first, let me ask, would you want to react to anything that you heard from the Minister of Information and the president of the GJA?
Well, let me just say that, for many who are saying that the time is not enough, it is simply because these things are not happening regular enough. So that if we had had regular encounters with the various sectors, because you see, you realize that the questions are sector related.
But there's meet the press occasionally.
Yeah, well, but we should, you see, the thing is that we should standardize it, we should probably institutionalize it and make it more frequent. So you know that probably every fortnight, every week, there is there would be some engagement with a particular sector. I mean, so the issue of the what do you call it? Is it the Oslo building? So the minister quickly organizes an engagement with the media, explain issues to them, break the issues, probably give us the media some documentary proof. You understand? To either debunk the allegation that has been made or lay bare the mere fact. We wouldn't then be inundating the president with all the questions that ordinarily should be responded to by the sector appointees. So I think in going forward, the lessons are these. Let's have more regular engagement with the media, particularly the sector ministry. Because, for instance, I admire Mr. Kujo Kroma, very open and discuss the issue. But can we, for instance, can Kujo meet the media a lot more predictable, at more predictable
Well, let me just
times?
mention that since he came in, they hold press briefings on Sundays, on Wednesdays.
Exactly. So
is that enough?
Well, because I'm not the main target, I wouldn't be able to say. But I say that as time goes on, as we do this, we'll exhaust the issues so that when you have an engagement with the president, 1 hour should be.
We're not starved of answers.
We are not starved of answers.
So, it's like
leave there, not satisfied. At least an hour would be fine, and then we can move on because many of the answers would have already been provided by the sector minister.
Quickly, prior to that event, GII came with a press statement, press conference. You wanted updates on some corruption cases that have gone cold, and you mentioned some of them: the bin liners, the fumigation, the bus branding, and all that. Hearing about this media encounter, did you have any expectations? Were they met with regards to that statement?
Well, our press statement was very clear as to whom we are directing our inquiries to. We stated categorically that we expect feedback from the Attorney General. If the president said a few of the things that they are doing, that was good. That's an icing on the cake. But we want more. So, like I said earlier on, if we had regular engagement with the sector, so for instance, the Attorney General, if Attorney General opens up and gives us more engagement, tells us updates. You see, it is not for nothing that in the Office of the Special Prosecutors Bill, there at 959 says that the Special Prosecutor will give bi-yearly updates, you know, on cases that they had handled and closed. It is not for nothing. It is just to open the system up and also hold the sector accountable to the people that got him there and whose taxes are used to pay him. So it's the same way, and it should apply to all the sector ministers periodically. So the Attorney General, there are a lot of allegations that have been made, and we've listed about 8 of them. The 8, interestingly, the list that the President provided even excluded the 8. That is to show that there are more cases that we don't get to know what is happening to these cases. One, the individuals that the allegations are made against have their rights. And the longer these cases stay cold, the more their rights are being violated, because as long as they walk on the street, they are tagged as having committed a crime, when invariably no investigation or the investigation is not conclusive. Secondly, for those of us who go around encouraging people to move from corruption or to stop corruption, people say that when the big men do, we don't say anything. So it makes people lose confidence in the system. Apathy had crept in, and we need these regular updates so that at least people will know that there are progress being made on the fight against corruption.
Mr. Boedi, thank you very much. There are a lot of quotes that people will remember from the president's encounter, but one got some people quite upset and disappointed. Some have said the president was quite petty in that statement, but others have laughed over it. But depending on which side of the coin you are, you may react differently. But just listen to the president speaking about the drones for medical supply saga.
This government has paid up the 1.2 billion arrears we inherited and brought the operations of the NHIS back to life. We're also in the process of launching the world's largest and most advanced medical drone delivery network. The 4 distribution centers from where the drones will be operating will stock 148 life-saving and essential medical supplies, and not only blood. The drone delivery service will save lives, decrease wastage in the system, guarantee health access for more than 14 million people nationwide, and employ over 200 Ghanaians. This program is not going to be run on the public budget. Corporate social responsibility contributors from private sector's players will pay for the service. I prefer drones flying to deliver essential medicines to our people than an investment in guinea fowls that allegedly fly off to Burkina Faso without any trace.
Well, you heard the president there linking the drones to the Jida Sada scandal, where we had some guinea fowls missing, not traced. But the question is, you are in charge. You used this against the opposition when you were campaigning. Instead of using this as a way of taking a swipe, why not give us an update on that case? What do you think?
I just love your question. And at the same time, I also love the president has a huge sense of humor. It's great. It lightens the place.
No, you're one of the people who laughed about this.
I made a good laugh about it, but I was sensitive to the fact that it has the potential to divide us more. Because you see, there are people who believe that, look, something went wrong, but nothing has been done about it. So to lighten it with, make a joke out of it means that, well, maybe the president is not taking this issue very serious, but it's a very serious issue. And so, well, maybe in future, if the president could pick and choose the jokes that do not divide us, that does not affect some sensitivity, it would be is a lot more appreciated. But I made a good laugh. I think that the president is great at his jokes.
And talking about jokes, even the question I was asked about the relationship between the figures and feeling the money in your pocket. You know, there was a point he said, look, I hope you are not spending the money on outsiders, spending it on your family, and everybody had a good laugh over that. But we've been asking you to describe the president's encounter in one sentence, my oh my, and some of you wrote sentences. We'll bring you those comments shortly. Kofi Asante team says, get the drones in. Anyone who is against it can choose to refuse drone service in an emergency. Simple and tietia. Okay, he's actually sharing an opinion, but not describing. But Hamid Rufai says, personally, it was quite insulting. But she goes on, he goes on actually, wants to explain that sentence. But Ibrahim Yado says, total show of super incompetence on the part of the president. Subin Damdut says, an embarrassment to the nation. Someone said he doesn't respond to aspirants, has quickly made a U-turn. Nantoma says, very honest, sincere, and above all, very easygoing. Randolph says, accommodative, tolerant, fair, hardworking, simple, generous, genius. Interesting. Kwekwa Asare says, everything was on point, especially Guinea Fowl saga. All right, there you have it. That was my favorite punchline. Bravo, Mr. President. And Trillion says, if you get drowned in the ocean and pierce yourself with a sword, then I will complete his 2 years mandate. Even I should compete against Mahama. He would still lose. Ebo Boyson says, it was very frivolous and useless. Let me just end with Kwesi P.S.C. Boama says, exceptionally brilliant and apt. He shows he's on top of issues. Well done, Your Excellency. So there you have it, mixed reactions coming from all quarters about the President's media encounter. I had the privilege of hosting Mr. Michael Bwedi. He's with the Ghana Integrity Initiative, GII. And we also heard from the Minister of Information and the President of the Ghana Journalists Association. You're watching News Desk. Coming up in business, Ghana's oil production to hit 1 million barrels as BP and Total express interest in exploring for crude oil in the country. Do stay with us.